Today we're going to talk about success. More exactly, more precisely, about gauging your success. It's a tricky thing, but it's got to be done. I've talked to a lot of artists about how they quantify success. And I'm sure you're not going to be surprised that my take on it is just a little bit different. It's typical. I ask the question and they say, well, I'm not successful. Well, why aren't you? What makes you think you're not? Well, I don't have sales or not enough sales to support myself. Put the brakes on right there. Really, right there. Put the brakes on. Is that the only way to gauge success is by the number of sales you have? I think we need to be successful in other areas before we quantify that area. Let me explain. Are you making art 75% of your working hours? Because if you are, that's a success. If you're not, well, then that's not a success, is it? Keep in mind the statistic that's out there that people who are making $35,000 to $45,000 a year are creating 395 pieces a year. You need to be creating a lot. So before you think about sales too much, think about this. Are you spending 75% of your time creating? And of that time, is 50% or better of the work you produce something that you would be willing to put out to the public? That's one way to quantify success. Success in making art is incredibly important to selling art. And that success comes before the sales do. Okay, let's look at another way. That other 25% of the time, are you taking care of business? Are you doing bookkeeping? Are you watching your income and your outflow? Are you doing the paperwork that needs to be done? Because if you're not, that's definitely not a success, and it's definitely not understanding your business. And that's a problem. I mean, that's a big problem. Maybe you're involved in associations that you pay yearly fees for, but you no longer attend or don't support the cause. You could be saving money, and money saved is just as good as money earned. Now, if you need to be spending the money, you should be. But if you don't, you need to pull back and not spend that money. I mean, think about it. Getting $30 in your pocket from a sale or $30 from not spending on something, it's really the same thing. You still have that $30. And that's a success. But you have to understand your business in order to do that. So that also comes before the sales, doesn't it? I mean, how do you even know what you're supposed to be charging just to cover your basic expenses if you don't do that part of the business? And are you getting out there in the world? Are you out there being you, learning new things, taking part in things, going to classes, going out to openings, going to plays, going to the community garden, going anywhere? Are you out in the world making things happen, talking to people? That's a part of what we do. It's being accessible, and that's another way to gauge success. Are you accessible? Because if you're not succeeding there, you're probably not going to succeed in sales either. See, this is the hard truth. You can have all the talent in the world. Maybe you'd get discovered. Probably not, because that's kind of a myth nowadays. It doesn't work the same. And then again, maybe you won't get discovered. And then what? You've got nothing. Zero. And you can create art all day long for the love of joy of making art. It's a beautiful thing. And we should be doing that. In fact, I would counter and even say that you should be making art purely for the love of art, not for the dollar signs. That's a byproduct. A byproduct is something that happens when something else happens. You make art. It would be a byproduct if you made money on your art. Now think about that for just a minute. I'm telling you, again, the dollar signs on what you sell in your art should be the last thing on your mind. It should be all of the other things. See, this is something really interesting about money. Money is easy. Now, I know you're saying, no, it's not. No, it's not. But if you're taking care of the other things that come before the dollar signs, it does become easy. but it requires your attention. 75% of the time making art, and the other 25% taking care of business, being out there in the world, doing the things you need to do, you know, promoting your art, being on social media, taking part in different juried expositions or exhibitions, or, well, you get my point. We all know I get a little tongue-tied on these things. The bottom line is there's a lot of things you can do to put your art out there into the world, and if you're not succeeding at that, well, you're probably not going to succeed at the sales either. So when you ask yourself, am I successful? I don't care about the money of it. And I know that that sounds really harsh, but here's the fact. I care about the other things, because if you're successful at them, you will more than likely be successful at selling your art as well. See, selling the art, that doesn't come first. That comes last. So unless you're taking care of all of the other things in between the making and the selling, well, you probably won't be successful. So from here on in, gauge yourself this way. Am I making art 75% of the time, and is at least half of it something I would put out in the world? Am I taking care of the bookkeeping end of things? Do I understand my business? Do I know where I need to cut back or where I maybe need to budget for more? And am I out there in the world doing the things I need to do as an artist, as a person who brings entertainment to the system, to the venue, to the whatever? Am I talking to people? Am I bringing all of that out? Because really, that's where success starts. It doesn't start with selling a piece. It started way longer before that. And what happens, I see all the time, is people go from making right to selling, and that's losing everything in between. Then what? You have no audience. Do you have people coming to your shows? Who are you promoting to? I mean, think about that for a minute. And that involves a lot of different steps that you need to be successful at before you can even begin to gauge whether selling is a successful thing for you or not. And it is a byproduct. And I know that's hard to hear, but it's also true. You see, the way art works, it can take people 15 years to actually follow you and buy a piece. I have somebody who just bought a piece about a week ago that I have known since my earliest days of putting my photography out there. That's 10 plus years ago. But guess what? They bought a piece. But if I hadn't done all of the stuff in between the making and the selling, it might not have ever happened. And the fact is art is a dime a dozen these days. All kinds of people are artists, right? And they're getting their work out there, and they're getting themselves out there, and they're laughing and having fun with it, and they're being upbeat about it. And if you're not doing those things, you're probably not going to have the successes they do. See, it's all about the price of admission. If you want to get into that world where you're selling, you've got to be willing to pay the price, and it's worrying about the other successes first. Again, are you making art? Are you taking care of business, and are you out there in the world? Because if you're not, well, success is going to take a much longer time for you, if it happens ever.